Hi, my name is Dr. Brad Jacobs, and I'm here to talk to you about brain health today. As you may have heard, Alzheimer's is becoming an epidemic in larger proportions as we age. As the baby boomers generation is maturing and moving into the 60s and 70 years of age, we're seeing more and more of this happening among the population. So there's been increased interest in this area, and there's a range of different things for us to be thinking about along the way. I like to think about brain health in a few different categories of what we can do about it, predominantly thinking about prevention as first and foremost importance, and then those that are experiencing mild cognitive impairment all the way to full-blown Alzheimer's and what can be done. One thing to think about is slowing down the decline of our brain health, if you will. We used to think that we reach full maturation in our brain function by age 20. And as it turns out, between the ages of 20 to 40, our prefrontal cortex actually matures and continues to make new neural connections, which allows for improved executive function and for thinking about more complicated tasks and thinking about things that require more reasoning rather than that pure impulse control that tends to happen in the young 20-something. That's the good news. And when we hit 40, the goal is then to try and sustain and maintain that great, brilliant brain health that we've matured up to that point. And what can we do about it? A few big tenets that are most important relate to self-care and lifestyle, actually. Number one is connection and relationships. And it's been shown that loneliness in particular, and that feelings of isolation actually increase your risk of developing dementia. That may be somewhat through the process of the second issue, which is mood. That is depression, and depression being associated with increasing your risk of Alzheimer's as well. So relationship and mood are a very important piece. And the third piece of this is sleep. Getting adequate sleep and sufficient sleep is very important for us on many levels. With respect to the brain, it's when we sleep, actually, number one, is the time when we actually have memory consolidation. So you experience the day, you go to sleep, and during that time you consolidate your memories, and new neural connections are made, and new memories are crystallized within the brain. When you lack and get less sleep, then that occurs with less vigor and frequency. Another important area with respect to our brain development is the types of foods that we eat and the types of exposures that we're exposed to, whether that be environmental toxins and pesticides, which can cause damage to the body, including the brain, or heavy metal exposure, for example, being another area. So thinking wisely about what foods do I eat in a wholesome way, thinking about organic food products as well. And a final piece is fitness and exercise. It's been shown that when you exercise, you actually increase the volume of your brain. You actually increase hippocampal size, which is the area of the brain that focuses on memory. And for those folks that exercise, actually have increased areas in that zone, the memory zone, the hippocampus, as well as many other benefits that you have. So that's the lifestyle piece to be thinking about. Another component to this is, which relates to this, is actually food and fasting. It's been shown that actually for those that go for short periodic fasts actually have improvements in their dendritic branching, the branch points of the neurons that allow for new neural connections. So if you were someone that does occasional fasting, that has been shown to be beneficial through a few different mechanisms. One is we're more likely to use ketones instead of glucose, and ketones is actually a better fuel source, and we were able to observe that more rapidly in the brain. And secondly, through that fasting period, it actually increases our mitochondrial function. We actually create new mitochondria and improves the efficiency of the existing mitochondria. And the mitochondria are responsible for the powerhouse, the power, the fuel, if you will, at the engine of each cell. If you're thinking about now what you might do to supplement and to support yourself on top of those lifestyle changes, there's a range of things that have been shown to be pretty interesting in the research. Number one is vitamin D levels, and we found that those folks with lower vitamin D levels are actually at increased risk for developing Alzheimer's. Number two is actually exposures to chronic low-grade infections, such as, for example, herpes type 1 virus. It's been shown that if you have these types of low-grade infections, you're at increased risk for developing Alzheimer's as well. There's one study that's quite interesting that's looked at folks being with multiple sclerosis and then being given high-dose vitamin D, and it showed that their actually relapses of their multiple sclerosis episodes actually decreased after receiving high-dose vitamin D. So those are two areas to be thinking about: chronic low-grade infections and what sorts of hormones and vitamins you might think about, vitamin D being one of them. Another area relating to mitochondria function that I mentioned is something called coenzyme Q10, which can be quite supportive of the Krebs cycle, which is part of the cycle that allows us to generate energy to allow the mitochondria to function well. Coenzyme Q10 is an important component in that cycle, along with the B vitamins. If you think about B12, B6, and folate, are very important components to be thinking about. And a final piece that I think is worth, that has less research, but I think is quite an interesting area, is looking at curcumin and also alpha-lipoic acid as important nutrients for better brain health. Thanks for your time today.